Hi, everybody. I am very excited to bring you this special episode of Soft Powerful Stories. We're doing something a little bit different here, working in collaboration with the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience and its director, Zack Kilm. We are recreating an amazing story slam that the museum held last year at the Martin Luther King Jr. Library in Washington, D.C. Same storytellers, same stories, and, well, way better audio quality. I don't need to tell you how often we wake up to really heavy news these days. And given the state of current affairs, some of our recent podcasts have also been pretty heavy. Here is an antidote to that. Imagine sitting down around a campfire with a handful of returned Peace Corps volunteers who have served all over the world. You get to sit back and listen to their stories. And as you might expect, they are as uplifting as they are entertaining. But first, let's hear from Zack. I'm Christopher Wurst, and this is
Soft
Power.
Powerful.
Soft
Power.
Powerful Stories.
Powerful.
Soft
Powerful. Stories.
Welcome to the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience Story Slam podcast. We are a museum in the making with a growing national collection dedicated to preserving and sharing Peace Corps history. We collect objects and stories from the Peace Corps community for the purposes of peace education, cross-cultural learning, and fostering civic engagement. Right now, we have a rich collection of artifacts in storage, but are without a permanent exhibition space. We partner with libraries, museums, and cultural institutions across the country to bring these stories into public conversation through exhibitions and community events. This recording comes from one of our public programs at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library in Washington, D.C., presented in conjunction with the exhibition Peace by Design: Posters, Poetry, and the Spirit of Peace Corps. You can view a virtual tour of the exhibit on our website. The program you're about to hear brought together returned Peace Corps volunteers and library community members to reflect on the ways international service shapes identity, creativity, and civic life long after volunteers return home. At a moment when global understanding often feels fragile, gatherings like these remind us that cross-cultural exchange is not abstract. It happens through conversation, hospitality, music, food, language, friendship, and shared experience. These stories are ultimately about human connection, about what we learn from one another when we step outside our familiar worlds and into community with others. To learn more about the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience, visit our website and explore one of our upcoming exhibits or online programs. We welcome your support to use these stories of service to build a more peaceful world.
I'll have more about our storytellers at the end of the episode. But in order, you are about to hear from Quinlan Taylor, talking about his time in Benin. Will Dreyer, Madagascar. Katie Hamann, Mali. Jody Olsen, Tunisia. Ursula Wright, Costa Rica. Jim Rupert, Morocco. And BJ Whetstone, China. And now, some stories.
As a Peace Corps volunteer, holidays always hit different. You're separated from family and friends, and you don't have that sense of being home, that sense of togetherness. But you do the best you can with the volunteers you're around. I was talking to my postmate B about it, and he suggested that we have Thanksgiving at his place, or at least our town. I've seen guinea fowl, but I've never really seen turkey. So I was like, well, how can we have a Thanksgiving without turkeys? And he's like, there's where you're wrong. I know a turkey guy, so we can, get the turkeys from him. To also be fair, we had the infrastructure for a Thanksgiving dinner. At my house, we had a front porch. I had a rotisserie made of wrought iron, and I could get some tables from the provincial credit union. So it would be pretty much like a Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving, but hopefully with better food. So we had about 4 weeks to get the word out to all the other volunteers about this Thanksgiving. So back then we didn't have smartphones or we didn't have email, but we had something just as good. We had little black kids. So when it was volunteer, if you gave a written message to a little black kid in Benin, that was like the biggest responsibility and something that they were really excited about. So just like that movie, Lord of the Rings, where they set the fires in different parts of Middle Earth to signal to the other humans, we would give a note to a little black kid. And like a montage, that kid would get into a bush taxi and ride to different villages throughout Benin. And over a course of a week, we got about 20 people who were interested in coming to our Thanksgiving, which was really exciting. So also we went to finally find my Postmates turkey guy. And just out of an episode of Breaking Bad, he was in this white van tucked away at night. And we go to the van and he'd open the van and we just see all of these turkeys. But these aren't like factory turkeys that are just like white feathers that you'd see in an industrial farm. But these look more like the turkeys you drew when you were a little kid in elementary school. They had auburn and brown and red feathers, just like something out of a Hallmark card. So we bought our turkeys and brought them home. They stayed in my place. I laid some newspapers out in my room and put a dish of grain and water for them to eat. So the day of the Thanksgiving, people filtered in. Ronnie, she brought mashed potatoes, and Janice, she brought string beans that she was able to get from the local expat grocery store. JP and Brian, they brought different types of beers and wines and things like that. And I paid my neighbor if she could kill and prepare the turkeys, because none of us really knew how to do that. After bargaining a bit back and forth, we finally agreed on a price. And then I also invited her and her Vietnamese family to join us for Thanksgiving. So just like something out of a movie, each of us had a role and responsibility, and we tied the turkeys up onto the rotisserie and buttered them and roasted them slowly over a period of time. Meanwhile, my other Postmates prepared the side dishes. We weren't around our family, we weren't around our traditional friends, but we kind of made a family of our own. And after an evening of having Thanksgiving dinner together, like a well-oiled machine, we created this holiday on our own. And we had a sense of togetherness. And that was something that continues to this day, almost 30 years later. And that's something I'll never forget.
I knew that I needed to find the beating heart of the village as soon as I arrived in Anevka, Madagascar as a Peace Corps volunteer. Now, before I take you on a journey there, by a show of hands, how many of you have actually been to Madagascar? Well, it's certainly a long way away, but anyone who's been there or even seen a documentary surely knows the stunning mystery of the Malagasy forest. On that first day, after a long trip along winding and hilly roads, I caught a glimpse of the place that I would call home for the next 2 years. It was beautiful. Homes made out of wood planks with thatched roofs blended into the hillsides like they'd been there forever. I also saw on that day for the first time the nearby forest called Maramiza. It interested me, and I wanted to go check it out for myself. Over the following weeks, I had the chance to do that. Stepping into that forest was like going back in time. Every time I entered the woods, my senses became filled with the smells of plant matter, the sounds of birds and wildlife, and the vibrant colors of the forest. On one of those early trips into the woods, I was accompanying a group of men who had invited me to go watch the village elder lead a traditional blessing ceremony. I had learned from my Peace Corps training about how important village elders are in Malagasy culture, so I wanted to make a good first impression. This was my first time interacting with our village elder. His name was Zanakutu. He's an older gentleman who comes up to about my shoulder in height. He carries a walking stick, and as we climbed up a hill that morning, I listened to him talk about how he wished that the volunteer who served before me could have stayed a little bit longer. We reached the top of the hill, and there was a clearing with a beautiful view overlooking the forest. It was there that Zanakutu gathered us. He told us to get in a semicircle and start the ceremony. Although I couldn't understand all of his words, I could tell by the looks on everyone's face around me that it was important. At one point, they broke out this dusty old-looking water bottle, and I immediately knew that it was full of toka gas. a local moonshine made out of sugarcane. They passed the bottle around, and everyone who wanted to take a swig did. As I saw the bottle approaching me, I could already smell the pungent smell of the tokagas wafting up to my nostrils. Finally, it was my turn, so I reached out, grabbed the bottle, slowly lifted it to my lips, and took the smallest possible sip I could, without making a gagging face. When the ceremony was over and we were on our way back to the village, I thought about how cool it was to have been a part of it and to have witnessed that traditional ceremony. My next interaction with Zanakutu came a few weeks later. I was planning a community meeting to get to know people and talk about projects that we could work on together. 2 of my friends came over to my house to help plan the meeting. And as we sat around the table, we looked over the list of people we wanted to invite. But I noticed one key glaring omission. Zanakutu, the village elder, wasn't on the list. I knew this would be a huge mistake, and so I wanted to speak up and say something. So with my friends staring at me, this new Peace Corps volunteer trying to plan a meeting while speaking broken preschool-level Malagasy, I proclaimed confidently in Malagasy, "Tsumain sasanan tagalamin," to remind them that we must invite the village elder. As I noticed the confused looks on my friends' faces, I realized that what I had said had nothing to do whatsoever with inviting the village elder. In fact, what I'd actually said means, we must wash the village elder. I was embarrassed to have said something like that, but my friends thought it was funny, and so I rolled with it. The good news is that the day of the community meeting finally arrived, and Zanakutu showed up. Instead of being washed, he actually actively participated in the meeting. Our interactions at that meeting, and in our previous trip to the forest, gave me enough confidence and connection with Zanakutu to go visit him at his home. So one day, I walked past rice fields and through vegetable gardens and entered the woods where he lived. His home was up on a hill, surrounded by green in every direction. As I approached his house, I shouted out, "Hodio," the Malagasy substitute for knocking on someone's door. I heard his wife shout back from within, "Mandrus, enter," and so I did. They beckoned for me to sit on a woven mat on the floor, and there they served me rice with stewed green vegetables. I wasn't expecting to eat that day, but Malagasy hospitality dictates that hosts always share what food they have with their guests. There's even a proverb, "Valala rai fanapana," even one cricket will be shared. As we sat there, Zanakutu told me so many interesting stories that revealed Malagasy wisdom and local history. One was about a fisherman who ate a talking eel. One was about how the forest got its name, and another was about how a whole village had rejected that Malagasy tradition of hospitality, and thus become cursed forever. Hearing Zanakutu's stories taught me why it's so important to respect the traditions held by the village elder. They hold the memory of the land and can give so much insight into the history of their people. Reflecting on my 2 years, I know I found the heart of the village in the wisdom of Zanakutu.
I thought I knew what hospitality was, but Molly showed me I had much to learn. You see, I come from Ohio, a place where Midwest nice is a competitive sport. Think I'm paying for the dinner, not you, your waitress's worst nightmare. Or there's a Thanksgiving meal of 50 people. That's normal. Casseroles are currency. And if you meet anyone, they're going to greet you with a smile and a hello and welcome you. That's my Midwest nice, typical Midwest hospitality. Then I moved to Mali, West Africa. My very first time outside the Midwest, outside Ohio, outside everything I knew, everything that I thought was normal. And I landed in this small, tiny village where time moves slower than dial-up internet. If you know, you know. And the red dust settles everywhere like it's paying rent. And the temperatures dance between sweating politely and I'm being slowly cooked. So in that village, like every Peace Corps volunteer, I had my person, my counterpart, my home-along. His name, Abdullah. He used a wheelchair. He couldn't walk. Because of that, he couldn't farm like every other man in the community to make money. So this man, he built his own path. He has a little roadside food stand, just a wood fire with 2 planks, 1 bench to sit, sun-baked bench, and that was his way of earning money. He would make a local meal called toe, not fingers and toes, but a polenta-like carb made from corn or gnocchi with a simple tomato, green, or okra sauce. Not many spices, maybe a bit of hot pepper if you could handle it. No flair, nothing trendy. But this is what he did to make food for and a living for his family. He supported his family, but he also supported me and other Peace Corps volunteers before me. He helped me integrate into the community. This guy was my savior in that moment. He was my connection to sanity, to understanding where I was, to feeling at home. One afternoon, I'm coming from my little mud hut where I live, and I'm walking to the roadside stand, and I say, Niche, Pugioni, Buongiorno, Wunawani. There are many languages in this country, but in this community, 3 at least known were spoken. And I'm greeting everyone as I go. Good day, how are you? How's your family? I pass Abdullah's mud hut. He has a 10 by 10 square. He has 3 wives and 9 children. They all live in this mud hut. And I'm on my way to meet Abdullah. I sit down for our daily local language practice. We are conversing back and forth when a motorcycle pulls up. He's just off the main road. And this motorcycle, per usual, is carrying 3 people too many. The tire sunken down into the ground. And one man gets off the back, lightening the load a little, and the motorcycle shoots off. This man, he comes like normal. Maybe on average, Abdullah would get 3 people to his stand a day. And he sits down. So we start to greet, as you do in Mali. It is a practice that is expected, and it preserves respect for each other and the culture. And so we both begin to greet him. Between Abdullah and I, we have 7 different languages, and he didn't share a single language with us. So finally, the one person in Mali we genuinely could not say hello to. But he sat down anyway and ate Abdullah's food like he'd known him forever. Abdullah served him up a plate, and I eventually went off to do my chores for the day, fetch some water, greet neighbors, which inevitably takes a 30-minute trip into a 3-hour journey of rounds of tea and someone's 10th cousin's life story. The next day, I came back to Abdullah, and I was practicing language with him again, and I remembered the traveler. And I said, Abdullah, did the traveler ever pay? How did you communicate? And he said, no, he left this morning. I thought, this is how Abdullah makes his living. I was a little perturbed. I asked him, where did he stay? And Abdullah said, with me. You let him sleep in your bed? He looked at me like I was the one struggling with language again. Yes, he had our bed. So where did you sleep? I asked. We slept outside. He said, you and your family and your 9 children all slept outside. So this one traveler could sleep in your bed? Again, he looked at me confused. He said, that's what you do for travelers. You offer your bed, you offer food, and you offer water. And that was the moment that my humbling worldview of hospitality was crushed to an American-sized, Ohio-sized even. It changed me. It changed the way I host. It changed how I walk into the world and notice who is there and alone. It changed how I greet people at my own table. And Abdullah's choice reset the bar on what generosity actually looks like. And he did it without a blink. And Malians continued to do it without a blink every time I saw them. Because Malians don't do it halfway. Hospitality. If someone needs the shirt off your back, you give it before they finish asking. No hesitation. No fear of scarcity. Just human generosity. So honest, it rearranges your insides. And that's why there isn't even a word for homelessness in Mali. I thought I knew what hospitality was, but Mali showed me there was much more to learn.
I remember the cinnamon and the cumin as I walked down the path in the middle of the Sousse Tunisia Medina. I was heading towards lunch with my host family, the family I visited every single day. They had said on Monday, and now was Friday, but they had said on Monday, we're going to do a very special meal for you. It's our best, and it is so Tunisian, and you've been with us long enough that I think you'll really enjoy it. So I had gotten all excited as the week went forward, thinking, I wonder what this meal is, because I've had so much that's Tunisian, and I love it, all the Tunisian food. And as I had lunch with the family every day, the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I was dreaming about Friday. And each time they said, okay, now remember Friday, this is going to be very special for all of us. Even grandfather said, this is going to be the meal, and I am buying it in the morning on Friday. So here I'm walking down the path. It's only about 15 minutes from where I live. A few little donkeys. We had the tea houses. We had the red peppers drying that we're going to make the harissa, especially hot. And I arrived at the wall at the edge of the Medina, and that's where my family lived, the Zine Labadines. He was a professor at the lycée where I taught, and he was always impeccably dressed in his white jabba, perfectly pressed. They lived in a 2-story, wonderful house that was tucked against the wall of the Medina. I knocked on the door, the hand of Fatma, and it echoed. You could hear it echo all the way through this 2-story house, particularly up the stone steps to the 2nd floor. In a moment, the door opened. Tafaddal, Mahmoud said, that perfect word of greeting that I knew I was home, that word that I wish I could bring to English and make it as warm and friendly as it is in Tunisia. He said, Tafaddal again. We walked in and we walked up the stairs. I was wearing a special outfit, special shirt, special long skirt. And the family had even dressed up. And so they had on tidier shirts. And the 2 children were just smiling and happy. And Grandma and Grandpa were at their best. They had even Grandma had put on an extra scarf that had extra flowers brocaded in it. And so we come to the meal and we sit down, anticipating. I always had the head of the table. And I had said to Mahmoud months earlier, no, I shouldn't be at the head of the table. I'm just part of the family. He said, oh no, Jody, as long as you're here with us, you are at the head of the table. So there I sat with the grandpa and grandma on one side, Mahmoud and Suad on the other, and the 2 children down at the other end. And we were set to begin. We started with one of my favorite foods, the bricalof. It was a square pasta type breaded piece that is folded into a triangle, and then it is fried in the pan. And inside it is a soft-boiled egg and some fish and some greenery and a little onion. And the joke for the Peace Corps volunteers in eating this bricalof is that you needed to try to eat it without having the yolk of the egg break and run all down your arms and off your elbow. And so they all watched because they knew me and my struggles with the bricalof. And of course, there it was running down my arms. And they all laughed. And they said, another few months and you'll get it down and you'll be able to eat it without messing it. So we enjoyed it. We were having a good time, and I'm now getting ready. Because then Suad, Mahmoud's wife, said we are now ready for this special meal. And she gets up and goes into the kitchen. Everybody is smiling. You can see the joy in all their faces for something special for me. She came out. It was on the tray, and she put it in front of me. It was a half of a cow's head with all that belongs to that half of the cow's head, including the ear and the eye. And there it was in front of me. Certainly not what I expected. It was ghastly. And they all stared. No one spoke. No one smiled. They just stared as I stared at this cow's head. And my stomach was telling me that this was not going to go well. And I needed to figure out, what do I do? I want to be part of the family, but I can't eat this cow's head. I'm starting to get a little bit ill, but I don't want to make them feel that I'm not part of them. So I sat and stared. They sat and stared. And I started finding in Arabic. My Arabic was not great, but I was choosing among probably the 30 words of Arabic that I knew at that point. How do I tell them that it's probably delicious, but that for psychological reasons that have to do with me and my stomach and my head, I don't think I could eat it. So I try to find these few words, and I'm stumbling because I had decided I had to be honest. I had to tell them the truth with those few words that I knew. So these words started coming out. They were not pretty words. They weren't sophisticated words. They were the raw words of maybe that this cow's head might make me sick. And I was mumbling along, looking very sad, and they were staring at me. And then they started smiling, and I watched the smiles on their faces. And then Grandpa started laughing, and the two kids started laughing. And then Mahmoud really laughed, and that they all laughed, and they kept laughing. And then I started laughing, and I laughed more, and we just laughed and laughed. Then Suad got up and said to me, "It's okay, come in the kitchen with me." And she took me in the kitchen, and there I put together some pre-cooked beef with some couscous, olive oil, and made my own little lunch. Brought it out with Suad and put it on the plate. And everyone was still laughing. And they looked at me, and I looked at them, and we all realized at that moment, it's okay. It's okay to trust. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to respect whomever you are and believe that those that you have become close to, you can respect and you can be honest with. That moment changed our relationship. We became so much closer. We laughed more, we talked more, because we didn't need to hide anything. And to this day, I wonder, from the beginning, was that a joke or was that real?
I had the chance to serve in Costa Rica. One of my favorite things about Costa Rica was 2 seasons, rainy season and dry season. Rainy season always brought an abundance of gifts. There were different colors on the trees. There was a bunch of fruit that I got to eat off those trees. There were also insects. So that wasn't something that was a favorite of mine. But cover your ears if you're an arachnophobe, because the story might contain things that are kind of upsetting, but spiders. And the amount of spiders that I saw during that time was unbelievable. Spiders. I was serving in La Vejía de Mansión as a youth development volunteer. And throughout this time, I lived with my host family on their compound. Because my host sister saw that I didn't like spiders, she told me a little story and a little tip. Now, I don't know if this tip was real or if it was just something that she made up or if it was just folklore, but she let me know that aerosol spray was a great trick to getting spiders to leave you alone. So she told me you spray the windows, you spray the doors, and spiders stay out. So I took that to heart. Me and her sons, Jose Mario, age 8, and Oscar Andres, age 10, that's what we did each night. Every single night, we would spray the doors, we would spray the window seals in hopes that spiders would not be crawling all over us. Me in particular, they didn't really mind because they're younger and, little kids, they like that type of stuff. But me, I don't like that. And one thing that came with that was I liked Lysol because Lysol had a great smell and it just reminded me of America. It really was this sterile smell that I just kind of wanted to bathe in at night and just wrap myself in because I missed home sometimes. So each night we would do the same thing, spray, and the spiders would go away. A funny thing about Costa Rica was I always wanted care packages. and they never got to me for some reason. My mom had just kept sending packages after packages, and my request was always Lysol, and it just never got to me. So eventually she gave up, and I had one can with me that I got at the American store that cost half of my allowance. So it was a prized possession. Around the holidays, my brother and sister decided to come visit me from the States. They asked me before, they're like, well, what's something you want from the States that we can bring to you? And I immediately responded, Lysol. You don't want candy? You don't want anything else? Any clothes? Nope, Lysol. That was my response. So my brother and sister, right before Thanksgiving, came down and they brought that Lysol. I went to the capital city, San Jose, to go pick them up. I didn't tell them any details about the itinerary. I wanted to keep it kind of fresh. And we immediately jumped on a bus. The bus is about 4 hours. We're going through windy roads, beaches, there's forests. We're seeing wild animals on the road. This is a brand new experience for them. And they are just looking in awe everywhere. I can only think of the Lysol that is in their backpacks. So finally, after what seemed like a million years, even though it was 4 hours, we pull off on the side of the road. There's dust flying everywhere. There's no signs that say La Fajilla. I only know it's my site because I see my counterpart's house off the side. They're looking around like, where are we going? Again, my brother and sister had just got off the plane. And I tell them, okay, well, we have about a 20-minute walk down the road to get to my site. So grab your bags and let's get walking. So as we're walking, again, it is in the middle of rainy season, but we've had a few days of dryness. So everything's a little dusty, but it's gorgeous outside. The trees are showing out. The animals are all out. We see a bunch of cows and we see a bunch of flies. We haven't seen any spiders yet, but there's a bunch of insects. My brother looks at me and he says, gosh, I didn't realize that there were dusty roads in Posh Corps. And I just kind of chuckled. You see, my brother had just left his service in Morocco 4 weeks prior, and he was hanging out in New York with my sister. So I think it was kind of shocking for him to see that the rumors and all of the folklore about Costa Rica wasn't necessarily true. Yes, there were dirt roads. We continue on walking down. Finally, we land at my host family's compound. And my host brothers, again, Jose, Mario, and Oscar Andres, come running out. They jump on my brother. I think they're excited to have a man around. So they are jumping on him like play skate, just super excited. My host grandmother, Doña Fabita, immediately adopts my sister into the family, and she's taken under her wings. Throughout the next few days, we're having a great time. We're connecting, we're exchanging language. There's some Arabic thrown in there from my brother's service. There's some Spanish. We're trading food and all of that stuff. And this entire time, it's sunny, so we don't have to worry about the nightly ritual that I have always done with my host brothers, Jose, Mario, and Oscar Andres. But the night before we're getting ready to go back to the capital city to spend Thanksgiving with one of the embassy families, it starts to rain. It is just monsoon rain everywhere. So the roads are muddy. The insects are starting to come out, and my favorite, the spiders. As we're getting ready to go to bed, my host brothers are excited because they know that we're going to bust out the Lysol and the aerosol, and we're going to be spraying the windowsills. After that, we grab the Lysol, we're spraying my windowsills and my door and my bed because I'm like, it hasn't rained in a while. I know there's going to be a lot of spiders out. After that, I put the Lysol up on the windowsill just so it's safe and I can see it because, again, this is my prized possession. My brother and sister ask me if they can use it, and I immediately say no. As Peace Corps volunteers, sometimes we're irrational and there's no rhyme to reason, and that was one of my irrational moments. I had a full bottle of Lysol I could have easily shared, but I decided not to, so I said no. I want to hoard this bottle. That didn't end up well. Me and my brother and sister end up getting in a huge fight. We start yelling at each other. We're trying to figure out what is going on with this Lysol. My host family has to come and try to see what's going on. Eventually, we get our mom in the States on the phone, and she's not happy either. So they end up using the Lysol, and they kept it with them the entire time. After all was said and done, we eventually make our way to the Capitol to go with the embassy family. Every year, the embassy families always open their homes to volunteers. So we decided to do that this year. As we're sitting around a beautiful table of turkey, stuffing, there's sweet potatoes on the table, the host family, as we're sitting around the table, it's beautiful. There's turkey, there's stuffing, there's sweet potatoes, all of the American works. And we're all having a conversation. And the embassy family then turns to my sister, the only non-volunteer at the table, because remember, my brother previously served. And they ask her, well, how are you liking Costa Rica? Because you're not a volunteer. You're just kind of here hanging out with a bunch of volunteers. And she just proclaims, I love Costa Rica. It's beautiful. Everybody's so nice and the food is amazing. The only thing I don't like is my sister being a hoarder and being greedy with Lysol. Everyone starts laughing. Of course, they don't necessarily know what that meant, but they then went on to explain, my brother and sister, how I hoarded this Lysol, and they're still upset about it a few days later. So I knew that memory was going to be cemented. And the beauty of it is it turned a really ugly argument into something beautiful, because it then turned into them explaining about why they were in Costa Rica and some of the things that we did. And despite fighting over a bottle of Lysol, all the positive memories from going to visit other volunteer sites to going into the volcanoes and all of that stuff. So I knew they looked at that as something to kind of laugh about. 15 years later, we're still talking about this bottle of Lysol and the infamous trip to Costa Rica.
You know, in the decades since then, I've heard in so many ways from other volunteers that the stories that we share and value the most from our Peace Corps experiences, these are love stories. And that's certainly the case for me. Over decades, I've shared with so many fellow Peace Corps volunteers that the gifts that we received from our service felt so much greater than those that we gave. And for my partners, Ron and Bill and me, that's how it felt as we were completing our service in Morocco in 1982. Over 2 years, we had built a vocational school in an empty warehouse on the semi-desert plain outside our dusty town of Khalat Saragna. And we had taken gifts of laughter, hugs, and love from dozens of boys to whom we had taught welding and mechanics and woodworking. But as we were completing our service, suddenly the future looked agonizing. Because the Social Affairs Ministry, it turned out, now lacked the budget to send Moroccan teachers to replace our 24 volunteers finishing service, and Peace Corps grimly informed us that many of our schools across the country would be closed, at least for now. I wrote with our group a letter of pained protest to our Peace Corps North Africa director, that is Jody Olsen, whom we just heard from a little bit ago. And Ron and Bill and I schemed to keep our school open by hosting a festive graduation ceremony for our boys and getting as many government officials as we could to come and tour the school and sit on the stage and bask in the crowd's applause over its establishment. And then I went off to 35 years as a foreign correspondent. My wife Karen and I raised our kids in West Africa, India, Pakistan, finally back in the States for college. When my daughter, Sarah, chose study abroad in Morocco, I flew to Rabat to visit her, and I asked her if we might travel down to Khalat Saragna to see if the school was still there, to see if it had survived. But holy cow, Khalat had tripled in size, and my only way to find the school was for us to walk from my old apartment out the road to Fez until the microwave tower up on the hill was just there, above our right shoulders. But when we got there, instead of facing a school in a dusty field, we were confronting the high iron fence of this sprawling construction materials depot piled with bricks and concrete and rebar. So, went to the gate and Omar, a thin mustached security guard, scurried up to meet us. And I explained that I had worked in Kala decades before, building and teaching in a school, and I asked Omar, can anybody inside the plant here tell us, when this place was built, did they tear down any pre-existing building? Oh, Teacher Jim, Omar says. In Morocco, if you're a teacher, that's a title like doctor or governor. Oh, Teacher Jim, he says, I was here when we built this plant, and I can tell you that we didn't tear down any building. I can also tell you that your vocational school is one block up and on the right. And so Sarah and I rounded the corner, and my brain exploded. It's the school, half of my brain is shouting. The shape of the building, the wall, the gate, it's all exactly right. But the other half of my brain is shouting, no, this is wrong. The school's courtyard was barren dirt, and look there are these 30-foot trees rising from within the wall. That's just crazy. Ding ding. Only then, suddenly, does my brain remember a last tiny victory as we had ended our service. Our school director, Hassan, had scored some eucalyptus saplings, as thin as your finger, and you could bend them like this. And the kids had planted them. And now these are trees with trunks that you can put your arms around. We found the current school director's home, and a young man answered the door, and I said, sorry to trouble you. Probably nobody remembers, but I said, this school was built decades earlier, actually by some American Peace Corps volunteers. And I'm looking for the director, and he holds up his hand, and he pulls out his cell phone and jabs the screen, and he says, Dad, one of the American teachers came. And school director Bashir Ghazi rushes home to greet us. And he says, we knew that Peace Corps volunteers had built the school, but we never knew how to find you. And look, Morocco is as corrupt a country as any, but when Bashir gives us a tour of the school, the welding stations and the engine stands and the cutting benches and work tables that we had built with our boys, the tools we had bought with USAID money in 1980 were all still here, still at work. And Bashir opens his computer to check he says, I need to check a number. And he reads down the screen and he says, 2,225. That's how many students have studied here in my 19 years as director. And he's added an IT classroom, and now they can teach girls too. Authorities, Bashir told us, he said, authorities had tried at least 3 times to close the school, no budget, etc. But it was clear that this brother had saved what we had built. And Sarah and I couldn't stay long, so Bashir drives us to the taxi station and drops us off. And as Sarah and I are climbing into the back seat of a car, I'm like this. I'm, just weeping tears of pride and gratitude, because those gifts that we received from our service, mine had just multiplied 100-fold. And Sarah puts her arm around my shoulder and she squeezes it and she says, "You done good, Dad." And 18 months later, I wept those same tears of pride and gratitude as I felt my gifts from service multiply again, because I was watching my girl back in Morocco as she raised her right hand and swore in as a Peace Corps volunteer.
As a Peace Corps volunteer in China, all I wanted was to 回家过节, to be home for the holidays. Now, don't get me wrong, being a Peace Corps volunteer in China was amazing. My wife and I Chandra, we were university English teachers in BJ, Guizhou, a small town nestled in beautiful terraced green mountains in Western China. We spent our first few months throwing ourselves into our work, trying to learn Chinese, and developing great relationships with our students. Students like Li Mingyong, who invited us over to his against the rules off-campus apartment for lunch. Or Ma Huiling, who volunteered to be our Chinese teacher after our first few Chinese teachers lost hope in us. Or Li Xia, who invited us to her own hometown, where she showed us the dirt floor houses where her parents grew up and the beautiful new home that they built for their family. So we could go to Li Xia's home for the holidays, but we could not go to our own homes. And since Chandra and I couldn't be home for the holidays, we decided that we wanted to spend our first Christmas in China, just the two of us, together, a nice peaceful Christmas. However, 3 things conspired to prevent our peaceful Christmas. Number 1, the care package that our family had lovingly put together and sent us all the way from Indiana, loaded with canned pumpkin and pecans and pie crusts, had arrived infested with pantry moths. Pantry moth larvae, it turns out, add a certain je ne sais quoi to a pecan pie. Peace Corps volunteers don't waste anything. Number 2, the weather in Guizhou is not great in the winter. From October to March, the sun never comes out. It is gloomy and cold and rainy. And this is such a salient feature in Guizhou that they named their capital city Guiyang, which means precious sun. The sun never comes out. And the third thing, Chandra and I probably overcommitted ourselves a little bit, like many Peace Corps volunteers do. In the run-up to Christmas, we had decided to write and direct a theatrical version of A Christmas Carol for our students to perform in front of the entire university. We'd started a variety of clubs and student activities, including a film club where we were screening American holiday films in our classes and in the evenings. And we were hosting a variety of holiday events and parties for our students. We had a lot going on. Some of Chandra's students also invited her to perform a traditional Guizhou dance with them on Christmas Eve at a local Christian church. So Christmas Eve rolls around, we bundle up in our coats and we cram into a tiny city bus with all of our students, and we make our way to the church. When we arrive, it is a very interesting scene. There are tons of children outside, and they are beating each other with large inflatable hammers, spraying each other with silly string, and wearing creepy Santa Claus masks with light-up devil horns. Christmas Eve in Western China is like a cross between Halloween and New Year's Eve. It's a little wild, but pretty fun. So we make our way into the church, and the place is packed. There are over 1 billion people in China, and I think every single one of them was in the church that night. So I worked my way through the crowd and find my place in the audience. Chandra goes backstage. There are a few acts before Chandra goes on. They are the big finale. And so Chandra and her students walk on stage, and they make quite an impression. They are wearing these beautiful traditional Guizhou dresses, long white dresses with a flower pattern around the hem and the belt, and matching headdresses. Chandra is 5'9" tall, so she is about 1 foot taller than all of the students she's dancing with. She also has blonde hair and blue eyes. We were the only Americans in BGS, so this is causing quite a sensation. Not only that, but she is nailing this Guizhou dance. So the crowd goes completely wild, standing ovation. You know, as they stand up, I have no other option but to stand up with them because I'm physically wedged into the crowd. And I look around and I'm like, wow, they're really into this. Maybe the crowd is going a little bit too wild. We need to get out of here. So our students form a protective wedge and start pushing out through the crowd. Chandra and I fall in behind them. About halfway out of the church, I hear Chandra gasp. I turn around and look at her. I say, Chandra, what's wrong? She says, BJ, someone just grabbed my butt. My protective instincts take over, and I say, Who? Who did this to you? And she turns around and points at a bewildered middle-aged man in a tweed jacket. I stalk through the crowd. I grab him by the lapels. I pick him up and I say, "Ni要我打死你? You want me to beat you to death?" His bewilderment turns to terror as he wonders why this Lao Wai, this foreign devil, is shouting gibberish at him. Then I feel Chandra tap me on the shoulder, and she says, "No, not that guy, that guy." And she points at another guy. I turn around and see a teenager. Black spiky hair, black leather jacket, and a ridiculous smirk on his face. At that point, I figured I had lost enough face, threatening to beat the wrong man to death. I did not need to lose any additional face by threatening to kill a child. I slunk the rest of the way out of the church. Our students got us out. They consoled Chandra. They got me calmed down. They put me in a taxi, and they sent us home safely. At that point, we're pretty much thinking, Christmas is ruined. So we wake up the next day, which is Christmas Day, and we're kind of moping around. And a few hours into the day, we hear something outside the apartment. BJ! BJ! I go and I look out the window, and who do I see? But Li Mingyong, Li Xia, Ma Huiling, and about 20 of our other students. And they are loaded down with bags of meat and vegetables and spices. I go downstairs and let them in, and immediately they set to work. Li Xia is chopping the vegetables and prepping the ingredients. Ma Huiling is making magic happen with the wok, and Li Mingyong is bringing out the dishes as they're finished. Dishes like yushang qiezi, fish-smelling eggplant. It tastes way better than it sounds, I promise. Mapo tofu, that spicy and numbing deliciousness. And the Guizhou BGS specialty, swansai, fermented greens with red beans and ground pork. So good. I get my food, I sit down with Chandra, and we're talking with our students and laughing. And I realize that we are surrounded by people who support us, who protect us, who deeply care about us. I realize we had Guizhou Guojie. We were home for the holidays.
Corey Taylor served in Benin from 1997 to 1999 as a volunteer. Originally from Cincinnati, he earned his bachelor's degree in political science and his master's degree in public administration from Ohio University. He now works as a writer and editor consultant. Outside of his work, he enjoys adventures with friends and holds to the belief that the best stories are the inappropriate ones. Will Dreyer served in Madagascar, where he spent 2 years living on the outskirts of a protected rainforest. He now lives in Washington, D.C. with his family. In his free time, when he isn't driving his children between sports practices, he enjoys exploring local running and hiking trails and finding inspiration in the region's natural beauty. Katie Hamann grew up in Ohio, with a mother known as the hostess with the mostest, quietly training her in the art of making people feel at home. Her first leap into the wider world came through the Peace Corps, where she served in Mali and later completed a second assignment. Since then, she has traveled to more than 20 countries and built a career in hospitality and public service, including roles at FEMA and as a community house curator. Her work centers on creating spaces of belonging, ease, and transformation. Josephine Jody Olsen served as the Peace Corps Director from 2018 to 2021. A Peace Corps volunteer in Tunisia from 1966 to 1968, she later held 5 additional senior roles within the agency. She's the author of A Million Miles, her memoir of Peace Corps service published by the University of Utah. Today, she co-chairs Women of Peace Corps Legacy, chairs the Peace Corps Park Advisory Committee, and the University of Maryland College of Education Board of Visitors, and serves on the Maryland Governor's Commission for Service and Volunteerism. Oh, and you can hear her on episode number 21 of Soft Powerful Stories. Ursula Wright served in Costa Rica from 2012 to 2014 as a youth development volunteer. Working with counterparts Don Jose Luis and Doña Francia, she helped develop lessons for local schools on the environmental impact of food systems and supported the creation of 2 school gardens. Her work focused on nutrition, education, youth development, and community engagement. Jim Rupert served in Morocco, where he taught mechanics and welding at a vocational school. His Peace Corps experience led him into a career as a foreign correspondent with the Washington Post, Bloomberg, and other media outlets before transitioning to peace-building work at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Jim says he cannot measure the gifts he received from his service, but he can tell the story of the biggest one, 45 years later. BJ Whetstone is an organizational development consultant based in Alexandria, Virginia, where he lives with his wife and 3 children. He served as a Peace Corps volunteer in China from 2006 to 2008, teaching English and promoting volunteerism at a university in Guizhou province. He later worked for the Peace Corps from 2008 to 2016 and remains a lifelong Peace Corps recruiter and third goal champion. Of course, Zack Kilm joined the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience as Executive Director and Chief Curator in January of 2023. He's a sociologist by training and a scholar practitioner in international education with over 20 years of experience in nonprofit leadership. Prior to the museum, Zack served as the Executive Director of Global Affairs at New York University's School of Education. There, he collaborated with faculty to launch dozens of academic programs worldwide and forged hundreds of partnerships with schools, healthcare providers, INGOs, and other organizations to deliver internships and service learning. Zack was also a Peace Corps volunteer in Bangladesh, public school teacher in New York City, human rights educator in Burma, Myanmar, and teacher trainer in Costa Rica and Honduras. Oh, and listen for Zack on an upcoming episode of Soft Powerful Stories. I would be remiss if I didn't offer a special thanks to Malia Rose, advisor to the board of the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience, who curated the Peace by Design Story Slam and coached the storytellers featured in this episode. A Peace Corps volunteer in Malawi, former Peace Corps recruiter, and third goal program specialist, Malia has spent her career helping people share stories across cultures and communities. Whether coordinating Peace Corps Week, supporting alumni programs, or mentoring storytellers, she has been an unwavering champion of the Peace Corps experience and the people whose lives it continues to shape. Thanks, Malia. To learn more about this program, including guest backgrounds, photographs, and a chance to leave feedback, visit softpowerfulstories.org. I'm Christopher Wurst, the host and producer of Soft Powerful Stories. Thanks for listening.